you can actually, in terms of the options, you can work with either a bank or a payment service provider, and I'll focus more on the payment service provider part of it. So I mentioned the OPGSP guidelines earlier. So earlier, to enable an export-import transaction, you would have a payment service provider tie up with the bank under the OPGSP guidelines and enable export-import payments. For something like import of services, you would again tie up with the bank and get an approval for the RBI to act as a collection agent. Now, what the RBI has done is that it has taken these two separate regimes and has brought it collectively under a single one known as PACB, which is Payment Aggregator Cross-Border. So anyone who is familiar with your typical domestic checkout experience and the players that provide that kind of an experience, now the same player can also provide you with a cross-border payments experience. So in terms of the benefits of the regime, there are several. Like, one is the transaction limits have been increased, whereas OPGSP saw 2,000 and 10,000 USD for imports and exports. Now it has been collectively increased for both to 25 lakhs, which is roughly 30,000 USD. So, and another interesting point is that import of services has also been allowed, which is not allowed under your old OPGSP guidelines. So basically, you don't need to shift to multiple players to allow transactions of different values. Up to 30,000 USD, you can use the same player for that. The second change is in terms of payment modes. This was more relevant for import, of course. So earlier, you could only do it via credit cards, debit cards, and net banking. The new guidelines allow it for all payment modes except for small PPIs. Then another advantage is flexibility with settlement timelines. For anyone who is familiar, say you need to keep your funds with the PA, you want them to hold the funds until the period of refund, just to make it easier to manage. So then you have that flexibility under the new guidelines. So these are some of the positive changes. Another change that is worth highlighting is in relation to onboarding. Under the PACB guidelines, you will see full KYC. And in case your buyer exceeds a cap of 2.5 lakhs, then you will also need to do due diligence for the buyers. So your PSP will take care of a lot of these compliances. For example, say payment modes, you can only allow certain payment modes. Your PSP will ensure that say wallets as a payment mode is not allowed, or say that your transactions are only happening within the specified use cases, or say buyer due diligence is required. That process will also be taken care of by your PSP. So this is a summary of the benefits you see and how the new guidelines would ease things off from an ease of doing business perspective.